By the 4th century BCE, the Indian subcontinent was a landscape of deep material wealth and intricate culture. Independent kingdoms and republics built sprawling cities, maintained complex trade networks, and fielded massive armies. Yet instability rippled through the region. The highly disciplined forces of Alexander the Great had pushed all the way to the northwestern frontiers, introducing a massive, unified foreign military presence. The local rulers faced a vulnerability. They were locked in political rivalries and economic struggles with one another, rendering them incapable of repelling a coordinated invasion force of that scale. Surviving this volatile era required a systematic redesign of how a nation is governed. Raw military strength was useless without a permanent central authority to direct it. Among these fragmented states emerged a scholar named Chanakya. He was a realistic strategist who recognized that philosophical ideals held no value without the hard, centralized power required to enforce them. He found an ideal political instrument in a young man named Chandragupta Maurya. Together, they executed a calculated campaign to unify the divided Indian kingdoms, establishing the Mauryan Empire. Taking territory relies on momentum, but holding an empire requires administrative mechanics. A nation collapses without taxation, law enforcement, and public welfare systems working in unison. To maintain this control, Chanakya authored the Arthashastra. It is an exhaustive, calculated architectural blueprint for transforming chaos into national power. The text rests on a pragmatic central thesis. A ruler exists strictly to ensure the prosperity and security of the realm. According to Chanakya, the happiness of the ruler lies in the happiness of the subjects. To achieve that stability, the Arthashastra constructs a rigid system for internal administration. It dictates the exact duties of ministers and judges, demanding discipline and insisting that appointments be based on merit. Chanakya recognized corruption as a disease that rots a state from the inside. He implemented financial oversight, requiring audits, physical inspections, and penalties for dishonest officials. This administrative machine actively managed the ancient economy. The state invested in agricultural infrastructure, building irrigation networks, canals, and reservoirs, while maintaining precise policies for disaster and famine response. Economic dominance was the prerequisite for statecraft. Without the wealth generated by agriculture and commerce, a kingdom could not afford to sustain the armies or trade networks required to project power. Protecting that wealth required constant vigilance. Chanakya harbored a practical paranoia, operating on the belief that a state must monitor its own borders and its own officials for internal threats. He deployed invisible networks of spies across every level of society. Their directive was to extract intelligence, monitor public sentiment, and expose internal conspiracies. The Arthashastra prioritized preemptive action. A ruler equipped with accurate intelligence could neutralize a political rebellion before it escalated into a direct challenge to the throne. Within the logic of this text, knowledge functions as the ultimate weapon. It allows the state to dismantle crises in the shadows long before they materialize into actual threats. For external threats, Chanakya designed a chess-like approach to foreign policy and diplomacy, known as the mandala theory. This diagram illustrates the mandala theory, mapping geopolitical relationships by placing the home state in the middle of concentric circles. A primary rule: states sharing a border compete for resources. However, your neighbor's neighbor becomes your natural ally because you share a common rival. This framework prioritized the cultivation of strategic alliances and military deterrence. Chanakya valued the preservation of peace through calculated positioning over reckless military aggression. By treating foreign relations as a predictable exercise, ancient India mapped out the logic of shifting geopolitical power balances that nations still use to navigate global diplomacy. Despite the structured foundation Chanakya built, the Mauryan dynasty eventually fractured. Successive empires rose and fell across the centuries. During these transitions, the physical manuscripts of the Arthashastra slipped from public knowledge. The administrative codes that built an empire were buried under history. It remained hidden until 1905, when an Indian scholar named Arthashastra identified a surviving copy of the text. Examining these surviving palm leaf pages, historians found dense script and grid diagrams preserved. It was physical proof of the systematic nature of Mauryan governance. Shastri's translation provided a manual for an era previously known through legends, making the Mauryan Empire a historically verified superpower. The translation allowed historians to compare Mauryan administration with its Hellenistic and Roman counterparts. Today, Chanakya's insights into taxation and diplomacy are studied by theorists and military strategists worldwide. The Arthashastra is defined by attention. It advocates for ruthless methods, but only as a means to ensure the security and prosperity of the subjects. It dictates that strong nations rely on leadership, economic resilience, strategic foresight, and a commitment to public welfare. The text remains relevant because it recognizes a permanent truth. Dynasties turn to dust, but the mechanics of securing prosperity, stability, and justice remain unchanged.